Anthrax, Megadeth, Metallica, and Slayer, collectively known as the Big Four. Which of these bands is the best? It's an argument that's been being had since before the term the Big Four even existed. Today we're answering that question scientifically. How are we going to do that? Allow me to explain. Music by definition is art, and art can only really be judged subjectively, which is why the arguments I mentioned earlier persist. So when I say we're going to address this issue scientifically, what I really mean by that is that I'm going to try to reduce the amount of subjectivity as much as possible. I'm doing that in two ways. Way number one is that I've devised a set of 5 categories that will be used to rank each band. Each category is distinct and well-defined. Using categories in this manner forces us to think a little deeper about the attributes of each of these bands and hopefully move beyond our ingrained biases. The second way I've tried to reduce subjectivity is to impanel a group of experts on the subject and use their collective rankings rather than just my own. I have strong opinions about every one of these bands, but I'm fully aware that they're exactly that, opinions. So by soliciting input from multiple knowledgeable people, my hope is that no single person's subjective ideas overly influence the final rankings. Speaking of final rankings, that's exactly what we'll have at the end of this video. After ranking each band from 1 to 5 in each category, we'll combine those numbers into a grand total and order those final rankings. As always, please feel free to jump into the comments and let me know your thoughts on the Big Four and on these rankings. With that, let's get started. The 5 categories being used in these rankings are musical ability, song catalog, live performances, influence/legacy, and consistency. As we encounter each of them, I'll explain the criteria for that category. Category number 1 is musical ability. This encompasses the musical skill level of all band members, including both instruments and vocals. We're factoring in the fact that all 4 bands have had lineup changes over the years. These rankings are meant to reflect the general musical ability of the band's members over the course of their careers. For musical ability, Anthrax scores a 3.3. Keep in mind, not all of these rankings are round numbers because we're averaging the inputs of multiple people. Megadeth scores a 4.7. Dave Mustaine's vocals are definitely something that's not for everyone, but his skill as a guitarist cannot be questioned. Megadeth has also had a variety of very talented second guitarists over the years, like Marty Friedman and Chris Broderick. Metallica gets a 4.3 for musical ability. For decades, there have been questions about Lars Ulrich's drumming abilities, but I don't buy into that mindset, and I don't think anyone can question James Hetfield's qualifications as a rhythm guitarist. I think that Metallica's success and popularity sometimes obscures the fact that pretty much every person that has been in the band is a well above average musician. Slayer get the lowest graded in this category, coming in at a 3.0. I personally think that Tom Araya's vocals have been the most consistent over the years out of these 4 bands, but musically, I do question the skill level of Kerry King and Jeff Henneman. While everything they do is absolutely perfect for Slayer, musically they can sometimes flirt with being a bit repetitive, and I'd classify their guitar solos as being more chaotic than well composed. Having said that, there's no denying that Dave Lombardo is one of the best metal drummers of all time. Let me know in the comments which band you think has the most skilled musicians. The next category is song catalog. This category gauges the aggregate quality of the songs written, recorded, and released by each band over the course of their career. Quantity is not a factor. A smaller number of high-quality songs will always outrank a large number of lower-quality songs. With that criteria in mind, Anthrax scored a 3.0 for their catalog. They certainly have some classics like Caught in a Mosh, Indians, and Among the Living, and I personally love a lot of the songs from the John Bush era, but relative to some of the other bands in the Big Four, they're a little below par. Megadeth's song catalog comes in at a 3.3. Holy Wars, Hangar 18, Peace Sells, In My Darkest Hour, the list just goes on. Even songs from the 90s albums such as Symphony of Destruction, Foreclosure of a Dream, Architecture of Aggression, and Reckoning Day contribute to the overall quality of the band's catalog. I think this 3.3 score might have been a little bit higher if Megadeth had a few more modern-day classics from the more recent albums. Metallica's song catalog scores a 5 out of 5. I suspect it's not necessary to list off all the legendary songs that they have to their credit, but I'll list just a few in case anyone watching had a knee-jerk WTF reaction to a perfect score. Creeping Death, For Whom the Bell Tolls, Battery, Master of Puppets, Sanitarium, Blackened, One, Sad But True, Enter Sandman. I could go on forever. I anticipate there will be some who think that the comment I made about Megadeth not having any modern-day classics applies to Metallica as well. To that I'd say, I think Death Magnetic and Hardwired to Self-Destruct compare positively to anything Megadeth has released in the last 15 years. Having said that, my ears are open if you want to disagree in the comments. Slayer, like Anthrax, gets a 3.0 for their musical catalog. As with all of the other Big Four bands, Slayer has a bunch of classic songs, especially from their first 5 albums. The songs on Rain and Blood are an obvious choice, but I actually think that Seasons in the Abyss might be a dark horse in their catalog for having the most consistent high quality. The next category is influence/legacy. Influence and legacy are two sides of the same coin, and this category is meant to measure the lasting impact that each band has had. Influence gauges the impact that each of the big four bands has had on the bands that came along after them. Legacy measures the lasting impact that the bands have had on fans. Anthrax's score for legacy is 2.3. I hope that no one watching this thinks I'm crapping on Anthrax. I honestly love the band. It's important to keep in mind that these rankings are relative to the other bands in the big four. In a vacuum, not being compared to Metallica, Megadeth, and Slayer, I'm sure they would score higher. Megadeth's legacy score is 3.7. A lot of what Dave and the band has done, especially early on, has been innovative and surely had an impact on the metal bands that followed. Metallica's legacy score is a 5. Whether you're talking about the lasting impact they've had on metal fans or the influence they've had on other bands, there's no heavy metal band that can compare to Metallica. If you were to force me to name one metal band that's possibly been more influential on the scene, I would say Black Sabbath. Other than that, there's no one even close. Slayer's legacy score is 3.3. My personal opinion is that Slayer should probably be closer to Megadeth's score in this category. I can't say that Megadeth has definitively been more influential than Slayer. Category number 4 is live performances. This category's purpose is to rate each band's performance in the live setting to include music quality, crowd interaction, setlist composition, and production values. For live performances, Anthrax scores a 3.3. I've always had a great time whenever I've seen Anthrax live. The band is active on stage and the music is tight. The one complaint I have is that I'd wish they'd vary the songs in the setlist a little more. Megadeth's live performance score is a 3.0. The musicianship is excellent, but Dave's vocals are pretty rough, and Megadeth hasn't always been the most active band on stage. Metallica's live performance score is a 5. From crowd interaction to musicianship to sound quality to production values, everything is always top-notch. Slayer's live performance score is 3.3. I think the main knock against Slayer's live shows is their lack of crowd interaction and activity on stage. Towards the end of their touring career, this improved with the addition of Gary Holt to the band. The final category is consistency. The purpose of this category is to factor in any lulls or drop-offs a band has had in their career. The fewer fluctuations from the expected quality of the output of the band, the better. For consistency, Anthrax scores a 3.3. Being the only band to switch lead singers and have done it multiple times hurt Anthrax a bit in this category. Megadeth's consistency score is 3.0. Dave Mustaine is, of course, the mainstay in Megadeth, but the frequency and sheer quantity of lineup changes over the years makes it difficult for any band to remain consistent. Metallica scores a 3.7 for consistency. The band lineup has remained largely the same over the years, but there are some which see the load-reload St. Anger period as a dip in Metallica's output. Slayer scores a 3.7 for consistency. Other than Dave Lombardo being in and out of the band and Jeff Henneman's passing, the core of Slayer has remained intact. Also, from a musical standpoint, Slayer has been tremendously consistent, to the point where some see that as a detriment. So those are our rankings, and now the final totals. The lowest ranking band in the Big Four with a total score of 15.3 is Anthrax. Coming in third with a combined score of 16.3 is Slayer. In second, with a total of 17.7, is Megadeth. And coming in first, ranking as the number one band in the Big Four, is Metallica, with a total score of 23. I'd love to hear your thoughts on these rankings and the Big Four in general. Please post in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, click the like button and subscribe to the channel. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.